Okay, our next section is Müllerian anomalies. The uterus is derived from the Müllerian system, as is the fallopian tubes and the proximal vagina. But uterine anomalies have been divided into 7 types by the American Fertility Society, and it's important to know these because they can affect not only the likelihood of pregnancy, but also the likelihood of successful pregnancy. The types are based on the developmental problem responsible for the irregular shape of the uterus, and there are 3 developmental problems. The first one is failure of one of the 2 Müllerian ducts to form, in which case you have agenesis. 2 is failure of fusion of the ducts, so they don't fuse completely. And the third is the 2 Müllerian ducts formed, they fused, but the septum did not dissolve. And so we have a duplicated uterine cavity. The first is hypoplasia or agenesis. These women may lack a vagina, a cervix, the fallopian tubes, or the entire vagina and the body of the uterus except the fundus. This occurs from a developmental problem with a section of both of the Müllerian ducts, and these anomalies are commonly associated with urinary tract anomalies because the structures which give rise to the urinary tract lie close to the Müllerian duct and are affected by the same injurious insult. If you have a Müllerian anomaly, you should do an intravenous pyelogram to see if there is a urinary tract anomaly as well. And a third of the time you will find that there is. This is an illustration of hypoplasia. This is vaginal hypoplasia. This is cervical hypoplasia. This is fundal hypoplasia. This is tubal hypoplasia, or there is no uterus and tubes here at all. Okay, uterine anomalies. Number 2, a unicornuate uterus. Number 1 was aplasia, where there was part of the Müllerian system that did not develop at all. Here we have one side that developed, but the other side didn't. When one of the Müllerian ducts fails to form, you have a single horn, sometimes called a banana-shaped uterus, develops from the unilateral healthy Müllerian duct. In most of the time, the single horn may stand alone, but there may also be a remaining remnant of the Müllerian duct which may form an incomplete horn. And here you can see is the normal side on the right, and we have a partial on the left. Here we have a non-communicating partial. Here we have no cavity at all, and here we have just a single horn. And here you can see is the single horn. Now, if a pregnancy should occur, which it could very well, there is less tissue in the body of the uterus, and so the stretching of the uterus may signal a preterm delivery in a large proportion of these pregnancies. Class 3, this is a didelphys uterus. Both of the Müllerian ducts developed, but there was failure of the ducts to fuse. Each of the Müllerian duct develops into a separate uterus, each of which is narrower than a normal uterus and has only a single horn. These 2 uteri may each have a cervix, or they may share a cervix. In 2/3 of cases, a didelphys uterus is associated with 2 vaginas, 2 cervixes, and the vaginas are separated by a thin wall, a vertical, longitudinal vaginal septum. And so here you can see there is a Müllerian duct here, and there was failure of fusion to occur. And here you can see 2 cervixes, one there, one here, and one there. Didelphys uterus. Number 4 is bicornuate uterus. Most common congenital uterine anomaly results from failure of fusion between the Müllerian ducts at the top in the fundus of the uterus. This failure may be complete, which results in 2 separate single-horn uterine bodies sharing one cervix. Thus, there is a single uterine cavity with a single cervix, but it branches into 2 distinct horns at the top. Since the ducts never fused at the top, these 2 horns are separate structures when seen from the outside of the uterus. So when you look laparoscopically, you would see 2 horns. So here we have one horn, here we have the other horn. You can see that there is a failure of fusion at the top, but not at the bottom. This results in a very thick septum. 5 is a septate uterus. There is development of the 2 ducts. There is fusion of the 2 ducts, but there is a failure in degeneration of the septum. If the failure was complete, a median septum persisted in the entire uterus, separating the uterine cavity into 2 single-horned uteri which share one cervix. The external shape of the uterus is normal, so you don't have the 2 horns looking from the outside. They look normal. So here we have a normal appearing uterus on the outside, but here we have a septum to varying degrees. This is a long septum, this is a short septum. But there's a single cervix. Number 6 in the 7 categories is the arcuate uterus. The uterus is essentially normal in shape with a small midline indention. Does not seem to have any negative effects on the pregnancy. And here we have a normal appearing uterus from the outside, but you can see that there is a little protrusion in the midline on the fundus, but otherwise a normal appearing uterus. That's number 6. And the final one is a separate category for diethylstilbestrol uterus. This is the female fetus was in utero when the mother ingested diethylstilbestrol. This was used to prevent miscarriages. This was common about 30 years ago. The daughters of mothers exposed to diethylstilbestrol during the pregnancy are predisposed to uterine anomalies, and the main thing to remember is a T-shaped cavity. They can also have incompletely formed cervix or a very short cervix. This can predispose to a cervical incompetency and loss of a pregnancy without contractions. The main thing to remember here is notice the T-shaped cavities. The T-shaped cavities. That's what you see with DES, and it's a separate category by the American Fertility Society. Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, Type 4, Type 5, Type 6, and Type 7. Okay, that's the end of Müllerian anomalies.